Marcus, I'm going to say this because I'm not sure you've listened to any of the episodes or you know anything about Scott and I, but both of us are IOPsychologists,
Right.
PhDs as well. So we are big fans of IOPsychology, but we're also big fans of science in general and calling out good practices and calling out bad practices with balls and strikes. I'm hopeful that this is the kind of conversation that we're going to have where we call out balls and strikes as we see it. But one of the things I heard you mention, and I guess this is kind of along the vein of professors stealing ideas in terms of bad practices. On the Department 12 podcast, you mentioned about this table graph that kind of sent you down a rabbit hole of, I don't know, I don't want to step on your story here, but do you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I was floored by hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, as I said in the Department 12 podcast, it all started with an email from a friend of mine, Peter Harms. I can mention his name. He's at the University of Alabama. And this was like 12 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. And he sent me this email and it just said, hey, can you look at this paper? And he directed me to the correlation table. And it was a paper published in Leadership Quarterly. And one of the correlations in the table was 0.99. And that was what he was concerned about. And, I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, that can be a typo. That can be an copy editing error. That would not have gotten me upset. But I took a look at the rest of the paper. And the rest of the paper was this train wreck of errors and statistical impossibilities. It basically used some structural equation modeling. They did some path analysis. And almost everything that they reported could not be true. And so that, raised an eyebrow. So being ignorant and naive, I emailed the first author and I said, hi, I read your paper. It seems that there's some errors in this analysis. And I kind of laid them out. And he got back to me pretty quickly. And he was like, no, there are no errors. I had a quantitatively savvy person do this analysis. And he mentioned a name. The person wasn't even a co-author on the paper, which is, kind of weird.
Red flag number two.
But at that point I was like, okay, fine. I don't want to make any trouble. And maybe a week later, I was on the website of the journal and I came across another article that it was kind of just in press, the online first version of the article by the same first author. So I was like, oh, let me take a look at that paper. And basically the same problems, again, just leapt off the page, like just stuff that could not be true, statistically impossible. And major errors, these were not like nitpicky things. These were like effect sizes were overstated 3 or 4 times, right? So again, I wrote to this person. I said, hi, it's me again. I've just read your new paper and there seem to be similar errors in this paper. And at this point, he got irritated with me. and he basically told me to stop emailing him and didn't acknowledge any errors. And at that point, I think I reached out to the journal editor and I said, hey, these are the 2 papers. Take a look at them. This is what I see. And I kind of forgot about it for about another half a year. And at the time, we were doing a meta-analysis on some leadership stuff. And I'm reading a very highly cited Journal of Management paper, same first author again. And of course, it means my curiosity is now piqued. And this paper is probably the worst of them all. It's like the central finding was blatantly impossible. And I knew that I'd been asked not to contact this person again. So I didn't. But what I did do is basically pull up their entire Vita and started working my way paper by paper through all their work. I think I ended up looking at about 30 papers and maybe 25 of them had these kind of errors in. So then I started emailing all of the editors. And like Leadership Quarterly, I think there were 6 or 7 papers that were affected. And all the top journals basically had this happen. I was obviously upset and kind of mad that all this nonsense had never been picked up before. Some of these papers had been cited thousands of times. And it wasn't like I was looking for errors initially. They just kind of leapt off the page. And some of the editors were very responsive. They basically said, this is a big deal. The Leadership Quarterly, I think, handled it very well. They ended up retracting 7 papers. Journal of Organizational Behavior dealt with it very well. They retracted a paper. But some others really just were not interested in fixing these errors. And I accidentally got copied on some of the emails between the editors. They all reached out to each other and were like, what are we going to do? Some of the editors were like, oh, this is Marcus. He has a grudge against this researcher who I'd never met before. I didn't know this person at all. Some just decided not to do anything. One editor told me that they couldn't do anything because they get sued. So it was all of these kind of responses. So initially I thought, well, we've got one bad apple here. but it turned into, I think, much more. And the most revealing comment I got from the editor of Personnel Psychology at the time, who said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, well, the authors they admit that they've made these mistakes, so they've misreported this, but they say, why are you picking on us? Everybody does this.
This was the thing that leapt off the page for me that you said. And so this is big red flag number 3.
Right.
Let's call it. I don't know. Talk about this, please. Please dig into it.
I didn't believe them. I was like, this can't be. These are some bad apples here. The field of IOPsych and management, the sort of related field, is still, I think, a pretty sound scientific sort of body. But I decided to investigate. And so we pulled up some articles. I think we sort of did an audit of a year or two of some of the top journals in the field, JAP, JOB, PSych, and all of those. And it turns out they were right, that the kind of errors we had spotted in their work kept popping up over and over and over again. Basically, and we only looked at sort of structural equation modeling, confirmatory factor analysis results, because that's what kind of these errors involved. So the base rate of what to me now appears to be basically just made up fit statistics is just frighteningly high. It's not 1%, 0.5%. We're talking like 20 to 40%, depending on how you look at this. And the analogy I always use with my students is, if I invited you out for lunch and I said to you, hey, I'll pay for lunch at a lovely restaurant, they make wonderful food, there's only a 30% chance that you'll get food poisoning. You'll probably decline that invitation, right? Or if I tell you to go fly to Los Angeles on a plane, and I tell you there's only a 2% chance it will crash and you'll die, you'll probably decline that flight as well.